take a bunch of questions, a pinch of controversy, and 2 cups of opinion. Stir thoroughly and let it set.
Smells good, doesn't it?
Welcome to the Craig Lord Podcast.
Yes, indeed. Good evening and welcome along to a live podcast special. Why? Because we're in lockdown and we've got nothing else to do. So why don't we just hang out with each other and just talk the evening away? Well, maybe not the entire evening, because it's not like I want to be romantic with any of you at all and talk about moonlit walks along the beach. We want to talk other things, so it's not going to exactly go till midnight, is it? So, however, tonight I am going to do something special. We're going to bring in a live guest and we are going to just generally chit-chat about the life and times of a local board member and how local boards work. Now, one of the opportunities we may have is if you put questions in the comments of the stream, I should be able to see them. And if we have time, I'll try and squeeze a couple of those questions in. Not for me, but for our very special guest. And it's time to bring her on board now. She is a member of the Waitemata Local Board. She has some letters after her name, which is kind of cool. And also she knows a bit about business and politics. There is some other cool news about my special guest too, but we will get to that in time. So let's bring her in now. Good evening, Sarah Trotman. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to join me tonight on the podcast. It's live, so we have to be careful.
Thank you. When I saw the preview, I thought I'd better rush and pour myself a glass of wine, not stick with the cup of tea that I poured.
I've got my coffee at hand. I'm ready to go. Although when I did a live Q&A on Thursday, I think it was last week, and by the time I'd finished, my coffee was ice cold. I'm not going to allow that to happen this time.
I'll do a bit of talking so you can get a few gulps in.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Now, I think we might as well just hook straight into it, just rip into it, because a lot of people, and I'll make sure I've got the comment section available in case people do post something, but a local board to me is something in the council system that is often probably ignored by the general population until something goes wrong. It's not really known about that much, and I strongly suspect that when people vote for local boards, they don't really know what they're voting for. They just do that old school, they open the booklet and, oh, well, I think we've got to vote for someone, so I'll tick that and we'll tick that, and they don't really know why or how or what's going on. So I think that's a really good thing, is to have you here doing that and explaining these intricacies of a local board. So let's start with it. Are you able to easily explain what a local board really is?
Well, first I want to pick up on something that you've just said. They open up the booklet and they have a look through who's on offer and they vote. Well, actually only 40% of people vote. So Probably the most important thing for your listeners to be thinking about come 411 sleeps away. I think the local board elections, or the local body elections, going to be held on the 8th of October next year, Saturday the 8th of October. So we want people to get out and vote. We've got a really low turnout in local government right across the country, and that's incredibly disappointing. So you're absolutely right. People don't sort of think too much about the local board until something goes wrong. They can't access their park or their library or the swimming pool. But the Waitemata Local Board, I think, is incredibly special. We've got 149 local body elected members right across Auckland. But Waitemata is basically Western Springs, Westmere, Ponsonby, Herne Bay, St Mary's Bay, and across to Parnell and Newmarket. And so we encompass the whole of the city centre, which of course makes the Waitemata board, as I say, quite special. So that includes, of course, the museum, the library. We've got a co-governance model with the governing body, the councillors of Auckland, with the Domain, which is, of course, the jewel in the crown of Waitemata, I think. Yeah. So every year, local boards put a plan together. Ours has a particular focus across 6 areas: Māori, connected communities, sustainable transport, high quality urban development, climate change, and I look after the economic development portfolio. So each of us, because it's such a complex board, there's 7 of us, and each of us have different portfolios that we look after. And we've also got a relationship with all of the business associations. So I have to give a special shout out to the Parnell Business Association and the Newmarket Business Association, where I'm a co-supporter with member Gunthorpe. So Parnell Business Association is my baby that I look after.
I don't think many people would realise that local board members have portfolios as such.
Well, some local boards don't, but because the city centre and the Waitemata local board is quite a complex local board, we have divvied up those different portfolios. Now, that's not to say, of course, that when we've got an issue, we don't bring it to the entire board. But if it's business as usual, we just rely on each other to sign matters off across their portfolio. Remember, we represent about 94,000 people live across Waitemata, and we have 100,000 workers coming into the city every day to work. So, well, not at the moment, of course, but generally.
So what does a local board, what's their job? What is a local board's job? Because people are probably going, well, we're paying these people, are we? A lot of people don't even realise that there is a fee for the board members. It's not a full-time job, but it's a job nonetheless, and it seems to be pretty busy.
It's a job,
Are you able to explain how that works?
Yeah, sure. So give or take a few thousand, the local board members across Waitemata and probably right across Auckland get paid $48,000 or $50,000 a year. And it's in effect a 20-hour-a-week obligation. It can be a lot more than that, depending on what key issues you're debating or investigating or consulting on. And then the chair of the local board is a full-time role, so that sits at about twice that. Both incredibly busy roles. Really what we're looking after is key decisions on things like, for example, we've got the Lees Institute in Ponsonby that's just recently been closed because of its seismic challenges. That's going to be it is an incredibly important asset to the people right across Waitemata. So that's really mobilising the community. We've had the hugely contested Erebus Memorial landowner approval in Dovemai Robinson Park, Mataharihari. And so we're making decisions like that. We've recently made a decision to fell trees in Western Springs Park. You'll be familiar with the controversy around that as well. But while all of those big issues are going on, we're also making decisions around running the Rose Garden Festival or what grants go off to local community groups. So it's a really varied and interesting role.
I guess then the other thing that people would want to know about a local board is where does it cross the line from being a councillor and a council entity, a CCO, one of the internal operations, to what the board's doing? Because you've mentioned like the Lead Institute that the board is starting to look after, and people might go, well, why are you doing that? Why isn't that in one of the council offices?
Look, it's very blurred. When you say we'll look after it, the funding will come from the governing body in effect, because that's a large sum of money that we hadn't factored into our budgets. But what the local board does is it does take an advocacy on positions. So as well as actually looking after our patch, and we have about a $30 million expenditure across Waitemata, across those community facilities, but we're also advocating to the governing body, to our councillors, positions that we as a local board feel are incredibly important. For us, heritage is one of those things.
Then, of course, we have the potential for power problems. Because where does a council or a local board actually have power? Where don't they have power? Where can they make and can't they make any decisions? Because when you hear about something's going wrong, and in fact, here's a perfect example, the Streets for People scenario, which has not gone down well with the general population at all, right across the country. In fact, everywhere they've done it. And the handful of meetings I attended in Henderson, it came across that the local board were hoodwinked by Panuku and NZTA. And I listened intently to the many questions and answers that flew around from those conversations, and I think it was genuine that the board had no power. They wanted to do things, and they put forward ideas and were ignored, and then they asked for things to happen, they were ignored. They asked for things not to happen, that happened, so they were ignored. So where is the power base in a local board?
I think with politics, you need to remember that there's technical power. So there's power that's given to you under legislation, the Local Government Act. And then, of course, there's real power. There's the conversations that are had in corridors with people, conversations that are had on the phone. I mean, I don't think it would be wise for me to wade into a different local board example. And that one out Henderson, you're referring to, was it $192,000 spent on painting the road?
Just the paint, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, yeah.
That's all being there's a lot of, I have to say, advocating for more efficient use of ratepayers' money will be something that I'll go into the next election on. It's something I have been gobsmacked at how I want to say inefficient, but I don't think that's fair on the quality staff at council, but how more efficient we can be making local government. But just back on the power play, remember, with local government, you often have elected members that are not necessarily from one political persuasion, left or right. So if you look at the Waitemata local board, I sit more centre-right. My 6 fellow board members sit left, somewhere on that spectrum. So what you have is just a fundamental philosophical difference. Well, I find it a very isolating environment. So what you've got there is you've got the City Vision members of the board in effect caucusing decisions before they even come to the board. So I need to think very carefully about where I actually put my energy, because I'm going to be torn across. In effect, they need to keep focus on one portfolio, being my economic development portfolio, because they've got each other's back in terms of their portfolios, whereas I need to be spread across all of their portfolios, because I can't rely on them being free and fair, actually, with the debate, bringing things to the table. And that's why I advocate for, we do have a public meeting. All local boards have a public business meeting once a month. Our Waitemata local board has workshops behind closed doors, and that bothers me a great deal. So in effect, when matters come to the local board, it appears that we're box ticking them, and we pretty much have, because they've been discussed in the workshop. So that's a real issue for people who are interested in engaging with their local boards. And you came to our Waitemata local board business meeting last week, and you will have had your eyes open to just how frustrated our constituents are, because we're not listening to them. We're not giving them an avenue to hear, to share their concerns and be authentically engaged with.
You broached the power plays that go on in the background, the behind closed doors conversations, and how more difficult it must be in your local board, given that there is a left and right spread, or split, should I say, but the split is 6-1, which means that pretty much you're going to get outvoted on pretty much everything when a vote goes to the table that has any aspect that directs towards the left or right making decisions. So does that mean, and you're allowed to be as careful as you want here in your answer.
I'm not typically careful. That's why I've got an arrest to my name, Craig.
It's very true. Yeah, you criminal. Does that mean they're corrupt? Look, let's say the word. Does that mean it's a corrupt system?
Absolutely not. There was one vote that I felt very uncomfortable with, and that was the Erebus Memorial vote. And if you're happy for us to take a few minutes, I'd be interested in just sharing with you what happened there. Because
very much so.
It makes me feel very uncomfortable. So, of course, all New Zealanders want a national memorial to the Erebus families and the people that lost their lives in the absolute tragedy. The challenge that we've got is we are the landowners, in effect, of the Dovemeyer Robinson Park, which, of course, is already a memorial to the previous mayor of Auckland. And we did not go out and authentically engage with our community. The Prime Minister was very keen to have the memorial in Dovemeyer Robinson Park, as was the mayor, as was the chair of the previous local board, councillor now, Pippa Coombe, as was clearly the chair of our current board. So what happened is that within a few months of us being elected, so we're all new to all of this, we were told that our workshops were confidential, always behind closed doors. As it happens, actually, they are behind closed doors, but I've since discovered that they are not actually confidential, but they are an environment where we can have free and frank conversations, which of course is very important for staff who are operating in a political arena. But what happened with one of our first workshops is the chair, Richard Norley, who I might add has been in politics since before I was born, did a whip around and said, which way are you all going to vote with the Erebus Memorial? And landowner approval was going to go against what the Ministry of Culture and Heritage wanted. Now that, nobody thought anything of it. So the vote was going to happen the following Tuesday. And then magically, the Ministry of Culture and Heritage clearly got wind of that. And, the chair says he did not release that information, but why he'd do a whip around otherwise, I don't know. And they withdrew, despite the fact that they put 1,300 pages of information to us to consider for that local board meeting. And it's a conversation that's been had for, many months. They withdrew their application for landowner approval because it was going to go against them, and then they in effect delayed it for a year, and then they got it across the line. But that left a very bad taste in my mouth, because what it did was it meant that the community, there are amazing community advocates out there, and if you look at Annie Coney, Joe Malcolm, now Dame Nada Glavitt, they're camping. We've got 83-year-olds camping in Dovemeyer Robinson Park in the Waitemata. It's just embarrassing, and it's appalling. Now, these are members of the public that have advocated for preserving the green space that is so rare across Auckland. And we have chosen to totally ignore our community, as we did with the felling of the Western Springs trees in the forest.
So, okay, corrupt is the wrong word, probably too heavy then, but just some, how would we put it, incorrect ways of doing due process. So there'll be a word for it that's just sitting there and I can't think of it, but yeah, just done wrong.
You're old enough, Craig, as I am, to remember that program, Yes Minister, when we were younger. Yeah. And it was yeah. And it was funny, but I'll tell you what, it's Yes Minister, but it's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's in fact, I described being on the local board with the 6-1 balance as pure hell to somebody recently. It's really, that's how I know it's 411 sleeps before the next election. It's not much of a advertisement for somebody wanting to go on the local board, is it? But I do want to give a shout out actually to Alex Bonham, member Bonham. She is very highly regarded by me and one of the City Vision team. She puts the work in, she's intelligent. I think she could get more strength, more confidence in terms of challenging her colleagues, so she sits more authentically with what she truly believes. But she's an outstanding local board member.
And to be fair, there are some wonderful local board members that I've spoken to from various areas around, and also equally, there's some where I've scratched my head and gone, how on earth did you get in this position? Why are you there? What hidden agendas are you trying to achieve? And I saw a lot of that, to be fair, during the 2019 campaigning session. A lot of, well, speak with forked tongue. I mean, that annoys the heck out of me. But you could tell sometimes the people who were there not for what I considered to be the right reasons. They were there for agendas. They didn't really speak of them openly, but you knew them once you started to read and listen between the lines of what they were saying. Once they voted in, out come the agendas, and we go ahead and do things. And that sort of lent me towards why I was curious about the power that a board has to make decisions. One of the boards that I see a lot of complaints about, and look, we can talk about it because they may come back at me and say, no, we're fine. And okay, so they can do that later. But Rodney Board gets a lot of stick up there. They are the forgotten stepchild in Rodney, and that's one of my gripes. They seem to get forgotten about. But quite regularly on the social media platforms that I peruse, I see a lot of angst against that board because they do what they want. They don't do what the community wants. That's a serious problem.
Sounds a bit like the Waitemata local board. It's an incredibly serious problem. Do you know, as I say, we've got people camping in Dubmire Robinson Park, Matahari Haripa. We've got people camping in Waiheke, with the marina. We've got people at Canal Road. We've got people all over Auckland protesting the lack of community voice, the lack of authentic engagement with people. And remember, these are people. I'm shocked at the number of people that say to me, thank you for what you've done for us. And I'm like, you're a ratepayer. You pay me to do my job. Sure, I choose to do it for only $50,000 a year, but that's a choice that I make. These are the people that are putting thousands of hours of time in right across Auckland to hold us as elected members to account, and we're ignoring them. And it's absolutely not okay.
The only choice, the only option a public has for a democratic protest on that, of course, is the election cycle. Yeah. And that's always going to be difficult to get the message across. It's always, I suspect that since day one of democracy, it's been an issue. It still is. Very low turnout. But maybe this will go towards changing that. Maybe the word will start to spread. That'll be nice. But I know you mentioned again, your particular local board, you haven't enjoyed it. And you've been honest and open about that. You haven't enjoyed it, which must... A person who, like you are, with people who are to research who you are and your background, it must be incredibly frustrating for someone like you who cannot do the things and achieve the things you want to do because of the issues in the board. Are you able to tell us what the issues are so that the general public out there watching and listening can go, I didn't realize that sort of thing happened?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to be very clear about is the two examples that I've given you, the Western Springs tree felling, which subsequently I have been told by an arborist has destroyed 15,000 natives, an established understory that's been regenerating for the last 30 or 40 years. And so I voted against the felling of anything other than dangerous trees. And there's real debate about whether the trees were dangerous or not. And so I think about 12 trees should have been felled, not 200. And that would have protected a lot of that understory. And also with the Erebus Memorial. So the vote went against me on both of those cases. So I want to put that on the table immediately. But I'm a professional governor, as you would hope all of your local board members would be right across Auckland. So this isn't about me throwing my toys out of the cot because the vote didn't go my way. This is about fair process, respect of communities, authentic engagement, and timely information that is full information for communities to digest. So that's how I managed to get myself arrested, actually. And I must confess, I have another job that I do 20 hours a week. And I said to my chair, I think I've got one more arrest in me. And she said, no, I don't think you have, Sarah. So you won't be. But I can tell you, it was so much easier getting thrown in a paddy wagon and taken to Mount Eden prison for processing than it was fronting up to our Waitemata local board meetings. Than it is. So that speaks volumes. And as you say, I've achieved a lot in my career. I'm a pretty resilient woman. So for me, it's about holding this board to account for appropriate process, quality governance, and, as I say, authentic engagement. I've had one of our largest key stakeholders in the Waitemata local board, I won't mention what entity they are, say we don't bother coming to the local board. It's just a waste of time. You say thank you for your views and you nod, and then you thank us for our presentation. You don't even document it in the minutes properly, and then you send us on our way. And we've spent, tens of hours preparing to come to present in front of you, and you actually just don't engage authentically with us. And you will have noticed.
Yeah, I noticed that during the meeting I attended last week, that I was hearing that items are being retracted from the minutes, and items and information that was put to a meeting is not officially recorded. Surely that's not allowable.
Well, the chair of a local board has the discretion. So if you came to our local board and said, I'm here to present. So when you attend a local board, you've got a 10-minute deputation, which you need to give us a week's notice of, or you've got a 3-minute public forum, which technically you can rock up on the day. And if we've got the time, we'll hear from you. But you could come to us and say, I'm wanting to communicate with you that I'm very unhappy with the quality of information that was put in the flyer in my letterbox about the felling of the trees at Western Springs. What will go into our minutes is Craig Lord attended the business meeting to speak about the flyer to do with Western Springs. It won't actually state what your issue was. So you will find it's a very rare occasion that I actually agree that the minutes are an accurate reflection of the board meeting prior. And that's, again, very disappointing. Let's face it, who reads local board minutes? It doesn't take much to make sure that they're correct, and that we show respect for the members of the public that have taken the time to come out of their day and present to the once a month opportunity that they have to present in the public forum to us.
I think that's a apt word, an apt description for it, the respect to the public, because you are paid as board members by the ratepayer, you're employed therefore, and you work for them. The local board works for the public.
Absolutely, we do.
It's the perfect lack of respect. It's the perfect description. I think it was Wendy Gray actually mentioned in her presentation how there is a lack of trust. And I can't remember what she said verbatim, but basically she was saying that the board is not doing its job, not engaging properly, and not forming the trust that it needs to the public. And also she brought up something that immediately sparked my ears, is that it's an unenviable job you do, because you are actually the link between the council/councillors and the general public. And as soon as I heard that, yeah, she's nailed it. Absolutely. And that's the importance of a local board. But that trust is a major problem. If the public are going there complaining about it and the chairman's not listening to them, there's a major problem here.
Well, add to that, if the local board is not saying to the chair, steady on here, we need to be listening better to our community. 12 community members turned up and gave a public forum, which is that 3-minute slot, opposing something that we were going to vote on. Now, there's a classic example where it went through 6-1. So the City Vision members voted with the chair, and I voted with the community. And that's what's happened with Erebus, and it's what's happened with the Western Springs Forest. And of course, the Erebus debacle needs to be investigated by the Ombudsman or the Auditor General, and I'm sure that in time that will all sort of unfold, or I certainly hope that somebody's talking to the Auditor General's office. And same with the Western Springs issue. So I went down to Wellington the week before we went into lockdown to meet with the Auditor General's office. But we need to remember that these bodies that are holding us to account are incredibly overworked. So it's almost as if we take advantage of the fact that actually we can't be held to account, because the Ombudsman and the Auditor General's Office is just so overworked they can't look at every concern. Now, we are very fortunate in Waitemata, and that is that we've got a chap called Keith McConnell. I have to say I don't agree with him every time, but he actually stood for the Waitemata Local Board as an independent last election, and I certainly hope he stands again, preferably for CNR, the party that I represent, but you never know your luck. So, you know, hopefully at the very least as an independent, because he's a quality individual and he comes to every local board meeting. Now, sometimes these meetings go on for 6 hours. He comes to every single one, he videos them, and at the end he puts up, within a week, his highlights and lowlights of the board meeting. So he's a campaigner for good governance on the Waitemata Local Board. We need 21 Keiths across the 21 local boards across Auckland, because he holds us to account. If we don't perform, his influences on his database hear about it. So he's pure gold. And I need to be really careful, because I am somebody that speaks my mind. And we need to remember we've got a thing called a code of conduct.
Yes.
And that code of conduct, in effect, says that I need to show respect to the position. So there's a very fine line between showing respect to the position and actually holding fellow board members to account, and organisations like the Ministry of Culture and Heritage to account. And of course, I've got this wonderful code of conduct, which I must confess I hadn't read, because I read the first 7 pages. It's 200 pages long, and I gave up after the first 7 pages. And I've got it here, actually. And when you're ready, we can segue in if you're listeners.
Do it now. Do it now. Let's talk about, you brought up code of conduct because I knew something was going on, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So please share it with us.
Right. Well, I went to speak with the chief executive needs to stay arm's length from anyone wanting to complain, of course. So I went to speak to his right-hand man about some serious concerns that I had. And I had a meeting for about an hour with him, and next minute, in effect, I get this code of conduct saying that my behaviour has been disrespectful to staff. And I thought, oh, good heavens, because I'm not a disrespectful person. I'm a fairly determined person, and I'm a very direct person, but I am not a disrespectful person. So anyway, this letter arrived, and it's a 200-page code of conduct. I've just put my glasses on so I can read some of it to you. So please just put your hand up, Craig, if you think it's going on a bit.
No,
do honestly, I mean, I must confess, I was so tempted to post it on my Facebook page, but I better not until the process has gone through. So speaking of complete and utter waste of taxpayers' money, so this is, of course, the first complaint. And normally with the first complaint, you'd sit the person down and say, for heaven's sake, do you not realise that you're doing this? Or, you know, something. Anyway, this has
just
gone
a bit of
straight
communication. Yeah.
This has gone straight from the chief executive, 200 pages, to a convener who has convened a panel of 3, I suspect, very well-paid panelists who will assess whether I've been naughty or not. And I sort of, on one hand, I think I do want it to go to mediation because I don't want to waste ratepayers' money. On the other hand, it's full of so many inaccuracies. I'm very keen for it to go to a full investigation so I can actually demonstrate what's rotten. Yes. Anyway, here we go. Specific examples of Member Trotman's conduct. So this is the first one. Attached to copies of documents and email correspondence with Extracts of these emails are also reproduced below. For example, at the meeting of the Waitemata Local Board of the 3rd of November, Member Trotman insisted, which by the way I didn't, that the following text from her speech be included in the minutes of the meeting, which of course I was delighted that they were. And I said, wait for this disrespectful behaviour. In my 30 years of professional life, I've never seen such a flawed process as the debacle that's unfolded during the Western Springs Forest debate. It is not okay to answer constituents' questions by sending him 400 pages of PDF information and expecting him to find the 3 lines of information that he needs. It's not okay to roll out the red carpet for some of our constituents and to make it incredibly difficult for others who have put a huge amount of time into this issue to engage with us. It's not okay for Auckland Council's integrity unit to hold the dual role of integrity and program manager. Huge conflict. Dealing with misinformation, short time frames in which the community have had to digest significant amounts of information, a lack of process, inadequate community engagement, and concerns that not all local board members have taken an interest in this issue has caused the community a great deal of distress. And anyway, it goes on and with lots of examples like that. I've just got to read you one of my favourite ones. On the 18th of May, I sent an email to somebody and the chair of the Waitemata local board, copied to other local board members, good heavens, and it said, it would be helpful if you would ensure the board gets accurate information. I've requested this many times. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
And that's what they considered to be a code of conduct. That sounds like a gang up to me.
Well, I had sent it to a judge, actually, who's a friend of mine, and he sent the same thing back and said it's been very poorly written and, you know, it's a beat up. But let's keep our fingers crossed that the convener is fair, and he certainly appears to be to date.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It's like, how can we attack? But what that tells me is the split that has festered inside Auckland Council between left and right, dragged in from central government, is heavy in council, and it shouldn't be so. It's such a difficult thing. See, I have a problem with the left and the right spread in local body politics, but there's nothing that can be done about it. Absolutely nothing, because everybody has a lean towards some way. It's just, you know, you've got your nature, and if you find out what people believe in, you eventually sort of say, oh yeah, you're a little bit left or you're a little bit right. Yeah, you might dabble in the other side of it, but generally you're over one or the other. So you can't get away from it. You can't. But it seems to me from the outside, and a lot of the people I speak to in the social media, they feel that the divide and the split of left and right is bigger in local government than it should be, which I guess is, you know, that's just us saying, well, it shouldn't be, but there's nothing we can do about it, is there?
Well, as somebody said to me once, a pothole is a pothole. It's not a left-leaning pothole or a right-leaning pothole. I think what happened with that code of conduct, interestingly enough, because I said I had a separate meeting with the chief executive about something else where I was just an observer, but at the end of the meeting, I said to him, did you actually read that code of conduct that you signed? Because I actually wanted to know whether he'd read it or not, because I was so gobsmacked at how many inaccuracies were in there. And he said, yes, he had. So what I think's happened, and I just will choose my words carefully here because I don't want to have a second code of conduct, but I think what we've got in Auckland Council is we've got a new chief executive who hasn't got local government experience and hasn't been a chief executive before. Now, if that was me, I'd sign the contract saying, yes, but you need to factor in an extra, 200,000 or 100,000 for me to bring a right-hand person that I can completely trust. So, this poor chief executive has got 7,000 staff, I think it is. He needs to be able to rely on a senior leadership team. So the senior leadership team have clearly put that code of conduct in front of him. He's signed it, it's sent off. Well, unfortunately, I'm not somebody to take that sort of thing lightly. I'm a professional woman. I'm not going to have a code of conduct against me that I'm not going to ensure has a fair hearing. So I think that he's in a very difficult position. I was very disappointed, though, that I did have... there doesn't appear to be a appetite with my fellow board members to have the chief executive held to account for what I believe, and they haven't, said the resolution's been implemented in a way that I can understand that clearly it is, and I'm not a stupid woman. But the chief executive is ultimately responsible for resolutions that are passed at those business meetings that you came to. So our business meeting says ABC needs to happen to the extent legally possible. Now, I'm no lawyer, but I understand what legally possible means. It doesn't mean if you've got the budget. It doesn't mean if you have the inclination. It means you will do it unless it's not possible legally. So I had a QC write to the chief executive to say, Sarah, I'm acting for Sarah Trotman, and she would like to have a meeting with you because she's concerned that the board resolution is not being implemented. And in effect, I got an email back to say, no, it's our opinion that the board resolution is being met. Now, the chief executive only has 149 local board members. I doubt too many of them go to the effort of briefing a QC and having a QC right to try and get just a half an hour meeting. I don't think that was good enough.
Fully agree. It's nice that this is actually getting out there now, because people wouldn't know. People don't know what goes on in the background. They've got no idea at all. And this is part of the issue of local board. There's actually quite a few comments coming through. I'll very quickly scroll through in case there's some little ripper questions for you. There might be something absolutely, they are hoodwinked. Oh, here we go. So yes, most people don't understand the role. Yeah, true. A very quick scroll down. Oh, people love you, Sarah. You're going to do well in next year's election, and that's an important thing. It doesn't
feel that way.
It's an important thing I want to broach, if you're happy to, is next year, because you want to step away from local board and step up to councillor level. You want to take on Pipacoom in your area. I'm all for that. I've been very outspoken.
I just correct you there, Craig. I do not want to step away from the local board. My career has been one of service. Mm-hmm. I want to I don't want to step away. I have to step away because it's just broken. And there needs to be competent people on the governing body that actually advocates for strong change. So I need to step up on behalf of my community and take on Pipacoom, and may the best person win.
Yeah, it's perfectly said. It's exactly the reason I've put my hand up to do things, is because I'm not happy with the way things are being done. So, okay, put the hand up and do it. But I have been quite vocal against many of the councillors in the last 2 years, and I'm not afraid to continue to be so. And you will be now. It's part of the campaigning. It's what it's about. But you want to bring, from what I can see, something very different to the table from what is currently being shown by Pippa. And there's a lot of people who are upset with the way she's running as a councillor. I guess you feel that. It's politics, isn't it?
Look, it is politics, but I hesitate because I'm more interested in talking about the things that I would bring to the table than actually criticising an opponent. And for me, it's very much around that engaging with the community. I mean, the community aren't just angry with the local board, they're angry with Councillor Coombe. They're angry with her pushing through the Erebus, or trying to push through the Erebus Memorial vote, trying to push through the Western Springs Forest. Those are two big issues that have torn our community apart. Yeah. And I don't understand why it's so hard to engage with our community. I don't understand why it's so hard to actually do some research and understand where the community's coming from. We had this chap who owns the pools, the Olympic pools, come to us to talk about the importance of getting his lease signed with council. And I know he won't mind me mentioning it because he came to the public forum and mentioned it directly. But our attitude was, well, you've still got 2 years to go on your lease. Plenty of leases, are left till the last minute. Well, that's fine if you're running an office, but it's not fine if you're running a pool. You can't just go down the road and sign another lease for another Olympic-sized pool. So there's this real lack of understanding about business and the importance of economic development in the city as well. Innovating streets, climate change, cycleways, they all get a huge push, but pushed to the side are the businesses that have been impacted by, say, the City Rail link, Albert Street businesses, there is just nothing that we on the local board can do to help them and support them. That is a tragedy. The thing with business owners, of course, is those business owners are putting their rent on their mortgage. One day there's going to be a mortgagee sale on their house and they're going to be without a business and without a home, without a family home. They've got everything on the line. And I believe the Mayor should have stepped up with councillors' support to provide some sort of compensation for those businesses.
Yep, even if it was a rates relief, just anything to make life a lot easier for them to operate their business, which at the end of the day serves the public. The thing you mentioned about the communication is what you want to bring to the table, and that people feel that Pippa wasn't listening. There's one place I'll disagree with that. She listens to her bubble, and I find a lot of councillors do that. They listen to their own little echo bubble, and then they feel they're doing the right thing because that core. And if they bring people in from outside of that bubble, criticism, suggestions, maybe a little bit of opposition to opinion, they don't want that. So don't engage.
It's healthy debate, mature.
100%. Yep. 100%
an
it is. And I know
strong person would say, bring it on, let's have that debate, let's find some common ground. I just don't understand. It's such an odd way of engaging with key stakeholders.
Yes, and that was one of the major issues from last week's local board meeting, wasn't it? So many of the public turned up to say, local board, you are not listening.
Yeah, I was very saddened. Saddened.
I've got a question here, and actually it allows me to click on it. Look at this. Here we go. It brings it up here. Do you, from Shirley Waru, do you think the government is interfering with our local governance in Auckland?
I'd like to give two examples there, Shirley. Firstly, I think there's no question that government did interfere with the Erebus Memorial vote. No question in my mind at all that the Ministry of Culture and Heritage got a heads up of which way the landowner approval was going to go and withdrew it. They were playing political games, and I don't have patience for that at all. And then the other way that government can control local government, of course, is with money. So they can create innovative streets projects that, I'll never forget Councillor Coombe coming to a local board meeting and saying, well, for every dollar we invest, we get $9 free money. And I'm like, don't you understand where that money came from? It came from those struggling business owners in Albert Street. It came from those struggling business owners in K Road who are having to put up with the City Rail Link station going in. So I think there are different ways of interfering. As I say, there's sort of technical power and then there's true power.
Yeah, it's the argument I immediately give when people say, let's put on free transport. Well, hang on. It's not free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody at the end of the day is paying for it. It's exactly the same thing. Here's a question. It's a good one. Excuse my ignorance, but who actually appoints the CEO? Do you know? I don't know who does it.
Yeah, I believe it's the governing body appoints the CEO. So the CEO, all staff are accountable to the CEO, and the CEO is accountable to the governing body. There's a CEO review sort of committee, which I think is made up of about 4 or 5 governing body members.
There we go. That's answered that question. When it comes to communication, now again, I broach back to the meeting last week where Wendy sat down in front and presented her speech, saying that the local board is the link between council and the public. Is that link fractured across, do you think, or can you only speak of your local board probably, is that link fractured?
Are you asking, is the link between the local board and councillors fractured, or is the board right?
Yeah. So that the message from the public, let's assume that the local board is getting the message, and the local board is actually listening, which they're not. But then is the council listening to the local board?
I think the problem is that the local board's not listening to the people that have elected us to represent them. It's as simple as that. And if we don't listen, then we're not going to communicate what the public thinks to the governing body. And credit to Councillor Coombs, she does come to the majority of our local board meetings. When she took the trip over the Harbour Bridge, she didn't come to the next one because I think she got the sense that, as we all felt, very upset that an elected official would lead the charge over the Harbour Bridge. Now, she would argue that she didn't lead the charge and she didn't know that that the 1,500 people that were at the Liberate the Lane rally were all going to break a police cordon of only 7 police officers and go over the Harbour Bridge. But, you know, that was not appropriate for any councillor to go over the Harbour Bridge and actually not be held to account. I knew when I sat on that digger in Western Springs Forest to protect the elderly woman that wanted to go on there, I knew that there was a risk that I'd be arrested. And I knew after I was trespassed and then willfully trespassed that if I was arrested, there would be serious consequences for my professional career. And that was a consequence that I was prepared to take, protesting misinformation, untimely information and incorrect information being given to my community. I've seen my community brought to their knees. You know, now other local board members can throw their arms up in horror and say, Sarah's exaggerating. I've sat at their kitchen tables. You know, they feel that I won't always agree with them, but they know that they'll get a fair hearing.
I assume Pippo and the other councillors who were on the bridge won't receive a 200-page code of conduct letter?
Well, funnily enough, I was chatting to somebody recently who did actually write a complaint, a code of conduct complaint themselves to the chief executive. But I understand there's been about 6 code of conduct complaints about Waitemata local board members. And all of them have come back saying nothing to see here, including our councillor cycling over the Harbour Bridge. So I found that quite staggering, that there will be no consequences. Apparently the mayor was pretty unimpressed with her, but, you know, I think he could have come out publicly and said something a little more strongly.
Yeah, I've got my opinions on why that won't happen, so we'll worry about that one now. Yeah. Can local, I guess the only way to, the system's there, isn't it? The system in a local board, council, governing body, all the systems are there and the systems are okay. It's just the way they're being operated. Is that the way you feel? They're just not being done right? And the reason I say that is because when the elections come next year, if people vote in, you know, if we get the right people into local boards, into council, the system should work fine.
I think you're right. I think you're right. That chap, Keith McConnell, who's the campaigner for good governance on the Waitemata local board, he's been doing an analysis, he said, on is the board actually worth it? So I think he's come up with the fact that it costs $1 million to run the Waitemata local board. Actually, in hindsight, given that we haven't listened to our community, have we actually added value to our communities?
Good question.
You know, it's a really good question and not one that I'm going to be drawn to answer in my opinion. But what I did say to him is, but that doesn't mean that you take the system away. You have to fix the system. So, you know, you have to have local boards. There needs to be community representation, but the local board needs to be effective and authentic.
The workshops thing, there's been a couple of comments about that. Can you explain to the people watching and listening exactly what that means? What are these local board workshops?
So every Tuesday we meet and we're given an agenda. And one of my pet concerns at the moment, there's always something on the go with me with local government because I've just never experienced anything like it before. Although the chair said maybe I'm not cut out for it, which I thought was a very interesting comment. But we received this pack and it's marked confidential. So for starters, I say, why is this pack marked confidential? Oh, well, the system tags it as confidential. I go, but it's not confidential. There's nothing in here that's confidential. Now, I know that there's nothing in here that's confidential because I understand what the council's obligations are to the stock exchange, et cetera, but your average local board member wouldn't know that. And so it's not fair for them to receive confidential or papers marked confidential when they're not even confidential. So there are some aspects of financials that need to be treated with confidence because of our obligations to, through various laws. But on balance, the majority of, let's say 95% of what we are given to peruse in advance of our Tuesday meeting is not confidential at all, and I can share it with you. And if you ask for it, I do expect it to be in a format that I can share it with you easily. At the moment, I can't share it. It all gets stored in this system called Nexus, which is incredibly difficult to extract information from. And that chap Keith McConnell I was telling you about, I think it was a month ago, he asked for some information which is not confidential, and it still hasn't been given to him. So what happens is we get given this information, and then we have a schedule where staff come to us and share their thoughts and their recommendations, and we have the opportunity to question staff. And there are aspects of that process that I think should be held behind closed doors, because not all staff, well, no staff have put their hands up to public scrutiny in the way that we as elected officials have. Kaipātiki Local Board, I think, if I'm correct, they are the local board that have public workshops and also have community forums. So we saw a shutting down of our community and public forum. They actually open up the opportunity to have proper engagement with their community in a different format.
Yeah, gotcha.
So in effect, it's a closed door workshop where we do have the opportunity to sort of have debate. But I do understand that the majority of matters are caucused prior to them actually even coming to the workshop and our business meeting, as was the Liberate the Lane notice of motion that Member Gunthorpe put into our second to last board meeting 5 weeks ago. I learned about it from the agenda that went out. Now, you'd think as a courtesy you would share with your local board members that you were putting something into the agenda called a notice of motion, but he didn't do me the courtesy of including me in the conversation that happened around that with City Vision members. Another vote that went 6-1. Seems like a good time for me to go and get a wine, Craig.
We've spent an hour chatting. I think we're probably done for the evening. But one thing I want to just try and I know it's not finalised and it's still ongoing. I'd just like an update, I guess, for the people out there listening. There's a lot of people who are very upset with the way the trees are being handled all around Auckland, not just in Canal Road. On everywhere. Yeah,
they are.
Western Springs was a disaster to me in the way that it was handled, and things weren't done that were meant to have been done. Things weren't done the way they were supposed to have been done.
I would agree with you.
There's a lot of questions going, but the effectiveness of post-issue complaints, post-issue investigations is where we are at now. This is where the situation, because the trees are already down. So now it's all about the aftermath. What's the latest with that, and will anything ever come of it, or will it finally just get swept under the carpet, and the people that did it wrong or bypassed the laws or the rules or the resource consent, will they ever be held accountable for what they did? So are you able to update us on that?
What I can tell you is that there are 3 different investigations going on. Okay. One is my code of conduct. The chief executive wrote to the chair of the community liaison group to complain about him not being independent. He is independent. He was chosen by the community and council together. So the Environment Court ordered a community liaison group to be set up. And the big beef with the community is that the council haven't shown due respect to that court-ordered process. So we had been told that the chief executive had said that staff must not go to that because they've been bullied. I said, steady on, those meetings are actually recorded, and I've attended as an observer to 3 or 4 of them, and I've never seen any bullying of council staff. There's certainly been holding to account of senior council staff. We're not talking a dog handler or a librarian here. We're talking people at the very senior levels of council. For them to say, actually, I'm not coming to a court-ordered process, I think is not acceptable. You need to put your hand up and say, I'm not coping in this job, somebody else needs to take it on. But you cannot turn your back on the community, especially when it's been ordered by the Environment Court. So there's real debate around that issue. And I have a high regard for the independent chair of that community liaison group. And so I suspect the CEO didn't write that letter to the independent chair. So I suspect the senior staff that have, in the community's opinion, behaved badly have actually drafted that. They're trying to shut down the people that are trying to hold them to account. Now, this is a $40 billion organisation. I work 20 hours a week for council. Let's say it's 40 hours a week because it's an incredibly big job. I can't be fighting a 200-page code of conduct as well as doing my job for the community when the board is stacked against me in the way that it is. So I think what needs to happen is the Auditor General needs to come involved in the Western Springs Forest issue, because it's a very good example of what's going on right across Auckland, and I suspect right across local government, right across the country. So I know that there are times when I feel quite beaten down by that issue, and I know there are times when the community feel beaten down. Deborah Manning, the immigration lawyer, she's a resident of Westview Road, which overlooks the forest, and she's the residents' representative. She said to me, you know what, I find it easier getting information out of the Secret Service than I do out of council. And she is not one for exaggeration. She's the consummate professional. And I thought that pretty much sums it up. So there are waves that, people have energy to pursue a $40 billion organisation in waves. And, I think people are taking a bit of a rest now that the trees have come down, but they will fire up again. Absolutely. They're angry.
So they should. Yeah, so they should, because it's wrong that things were not done the way they were meant to be. It's quite simple. To me, it's cut and dry. There's no grey area. You're meant to do this, but you did that. Who's accountable? Who signed off? Who gave the order to do that when it wasn't what you were told and paid to do? So yeah, that's all right. Gives us plenty to dig into later. Look, I think it's time you went off and had your wine for the evening.
I agree.
Yeah, I might go have a cup of tea. It's been absolutely wonderful getting some insight for you. I'm sure the viewers have enjoyed hearing some things, and they've probably been a little disheartened by how it affects you. But to me, that's almost a good thing. It needs to be out. That it's not a cushy little, we turn up a couple of hours a week, chat about a few things, and then we go home again. This is a big gig.
Oh, I think there's a few local board members that do that. That would be a very good life. That would be a very good life. But it would be... it would not be what you've been elected to do.
Yeah. One of the things I'm pushing very hard is for people to put their hand up. People who don't normally do it, I want them to say, hey, actually, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll represent the community and put my hand up because I'm disappointed with the action. And I believe there's actually a lot of people who are going, okay, we could possibly do this. So hopefully your conversation here tonight has helped them and hasn't put them off at all. But maybe it'll inspire them to go. And I'm very happy
to take calls directly from anyone that is interested, Craig. And,
brilliant.
Because I suspect I might have put them off, but I don't mean to. I just want to, share warts and all what the truth of the matter is and encourage people, quality people, to step up.
Yeah, and I think what you've told us in this, just an hour-long podcast actually will do that. It won't put them off. It'll make them go, okay, then, well, if there's an opportunity to fix it, I'll put my hand up and be one of those people that's going to step forward and try and help fix the fix the system. So that'll be great.
Marvellous.
Yeah, wow, marvellous
Yeah.
indeed. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
You're
I'm sure that
welcome.
people appreciated it. You go have your coffee because it's just gone 8 p.m. on a lockdown. You got nothing else to do. 40 hours a week, whatever, you know. But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Take it
Okay,
easy.
bye-bye. Bye-bye for now. Okay, so there we are. Sarah Trotman. What a wonderful guest she was. Had a wee chat for an hour. Probably could have gone for 2 hours. Maybe even 3. But there is a point, isn't there? There is a point where we have to say goodbye. So from me, I thank you for listening to this live special. I hope it gave you some insight. And we'll do it again soon, won't we? Well, we're locked down till we're in Auckland till the 31st. We've got another week of these things coming. Why not? Let me see what I can drag up. See if I've got the energy to do it. Got nothing else to do. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Hallelujah. It's time for a conversation with the Lord.